All right, great. Welcome and good afternoon. I am Vaishali from Atma, and Atma has been doing webinars. We started this webinars platform since 2017, and we try to have a lot of speakers, and it's basically a space where we can discuss things that affect us as a sector. So that's what we try to do. And of course, fundraising is quite a common and loved topic. We always see a lot of people join in. And I hope that today's session is also as insightful as they are at the others. You can check out all the previous webinars on our YouTube channel. We'll link that in the chat box. And there is a playlist. It's also divided by playlists. So you can see human resources, communication, fundraising. You can see all of that. We do encourage you to go through it. There are some really good things in it. And in case you want to connect to any of the speakers from there, do reach out to us. We would love to do that. Now on to, I'll just introduce our speakers for today. And this is, this session today is also in line with you should also check out our previous webinar, which was done on volunteer management. It came out of the same study. So there was a study done on individual giving and volunteer practices in the sector. I think it's quite unique and one of a kind that's happened. And two lovely field guides have emerged from that. If you have not seen the website, you should. It's quite fun, if nothing else. And I think fundraising is quite a lonely and difficult journey. So this might add some color to it. So I welcome Kavita and Aishwarya. I'll just quickly introduce them and then we'll start with the webinar. Yeah. So Kavita is an independent expert on fundraising for nonprofits. She consults with GivingTuesday, which is a global generosity movement, and she's a senior advisor there for India. She was formerly a consultant with the world's first and largest nonprofit crowdfunding platform, GlobalGiving. She helped it increase its reach and impact in India. She has over 15 years of experience working with multiple nonprofits in the country, and you'll see that when she speaks today. Before discovering her passion for making the world a better place, she spent a couple of years with Goldman Sachs, where spreadsheets and data became her love. And her passion for child rights also led her to complete her post graduation in child rights law from NLSIU Bangalore. So thank you, Kavita. And in the fundraising playlist, you'll see that Kavita has also done webinars for us in the past. So it's always nice to have you. So welcome back, I would say. And then we have our very own Aishwarya, who's the CEO at Atma, and she has been an integral part of its journey so far. She's contributed to the organization's strategy and growth for the last 8 years, and she's worked across multiple roles, including she used to also do fundraising for Atma, and now she's back in that role. So with 12 years of experience across corporate law, FMCG sales and the nonprofit sector. She has supported NGOs on strategy, fundraising, and systems. She holds a law degree from Nalsar and a postgraduate degree in from IIM Lucknow. So, welcome, Aishwarya. And before I hand it over to them, just a few things to note. We have noted all the questions that you have put in through your registration form, and the speakers will try to address it through the course of this hour and a half. There is a dedicated section at the end, but feel free to put in your questions in the chat box. I'll also request the speakers that if it is possible, after each section, after a chunk, you can pause and maybe we can take up any pressing issues. But we'll also be mindful that the flow of the overall session is not affected. Um, Another thing is, I'll just say this in हिंदी कि आज का सेशन हम ज़्यादातर इंग्लिश में ही रखेंगे, लेकिन स्पीकर्स हिंदी और इंग्लिश दोनों जानते हैं. तो अगर आपके कोई सवाल है तो आप प्लीज़ चैट बॉक्स में लिख सकते हैं. आत्मा की टीम में मैं हूँ, अंतरा है. तो अगर आपको कुछ क्लैरिफिकेशन चाहिए हिंदी में तो हम चैट बॉक्स के द्वारा बात कर सकते हैं और आप सवाल जरूर हिंदी में पूछ सकते हैं. सो यस, दैट्स इट एंड नाउ ओवर टू यू, ऐश्वर्या.
Thanks, Vaishali. Are you all able to see my screen? Yeah. All right. Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon. We have an exciting session planned for you today. Um, as Vaishali said, we are going to focus on individual giving and just to preface, the part on the field guides that we'll be talking about. It's very important to understand where all of this stems from, and that's the Udarta EG report. So we are going to take you through a little bit on how this report came about, some data highlights from the report, and then do a deep dive into what has emerged out of the report, which is the field guides on fundraising. We are going to look at a few tools more specifically, and also offer you an opportunity to engage with those toolkits. Obviously, the journey on exploration on individual giving doesn't end with this session. So, goes without saying that the Atma team and the Giving Together Foundation and Giving Tuesday team is always available to take up anything offline. But hopefully, this session should introduce some of what we have learned over the last year or so and more actually through our experiences on fundraising and distill some of our insights into practical how-to tips, tools, tricks, templates for you. So with that, diving right in. So the Udarta EG report is a one-of-a-kind collaborative research study that was done last year on understanding how Indian nonprofits engage with everyday givers. So, as you might have seen in the past, the sector has had a lot of reports being released around, say, CSR giving, on HNIs, on family philanthropy. You might have come across some of these reports over the years. And a few have also explored the space of everyday giving. For example, we had the How India Gives report or the Everyday Giving report by Satwa a few years ago. But what this was attempting to do was essentially trying to understand nonprofit practices around everyday giving, to understand what are the strategies that work, where do the challenges lie, and what do fundraisers and volunteer managers in these organizations really need to know about everyday giving in order to be effective in engaging everyday givers in their organization. So, with that intent, a group of organizations from the sector really came together and pulled this off. And goes without saying, there were a lot of hands, hearts, minds involved in this entire exercise. Um, with the support and collaboration of all of the organizations that you see on the screen, we were able to initially reach out to close to 700 plus organizations who expressed an interest in participating in the study. And the study ended up actually profiling over 300 NGOs who shared a lot about their practices around everyday giving. So, what Kavita is going to be taking you through next is actually coming from the insights that we have derived through the practices shared by these 304 organizations, as well as a lot of experts and other intermediaries, donor organizations, etc., who have also collaborated to share their insights. Um, just to sum it up, of these 304 organizations, about 70% of them have been engaging everyday givers as volunteers, and about 37% of them have been raising funds through everyday givers. Right, so that's the mix that this study covered. And without any further ado, I'm going to invite Kavita to now take us through, what the Udarta report was all about and the key insights.
Thanks, Aishwarya. I know everyone's waiting to explore the field guides. That's the more exciting part, but I promise we'll make this section also exciting. We wanted to make sure you have the context behind which the field guides were created and the data that helped us create the field guides and help us make decisions around what type of toolkits to create for the sector. And this is not going to be me presenting the data to you. We're going to do an exercise where we all engage with the data. We all look at the data and interpret it and think of what it means to us. If you, for some reason, have not seen this report yet, you should. This is a QR code if you want to scan it. I'll also put the link. Okay, thanks, Antara. She's already done it. Link to the report is in the chat box. So do save it. You don't have to go through it right now, but do save it so you can read it at a later point, because obviously we're not going to be able to go through all of the amazing data that's available in this report during this short meeting. But before we go into the data, I had a simple question because, I use this word everyday giving. We said Udarta stands for using data and research to advance everyday giving. What is everyday giving? I just wanted to open this out to the group to see if anyone has a response to what does everyday giving mean to you? You can just raise your hand and respond. Anybody. Just what is your interpretation? What have you understood from this word everyday giving? Yes, Priya.
I think
Priya Ranjan.
the donations comes from, every day, if the organization will collect from the donors. So that may be the everyday gift.
Donations coming every day. That's what you understood. Okay. All right. Anyone else? Is there something in the small ticket funding of 250 to 10,000? Okay. Thank you, doctor.
Everyday giving means, I think, simply I can say, madam.
Sridhar, can you speak a little louder?
Madam, yes, madam. Everyday giving means it also be we can say that only donating every day. Otherwise,
Every day. Okay.
not only money, we can donate knowledge. We can donate other any requirements as per the community demands. Every day we can do whatever is possible with us. It may be called everyday giving.
Okay, so not just donation of money, but donation of other things like your time, it could be goods. And someone else has said donations given for normal cause. Okay, great. Thank you for all the responses that you've given. I wanted to share what we had defined it as in the study. So when we put the survey out into the sector and asked nonprofits to respond, this is how we had explained it. We kept it very high level and open. So we said it's giving by individual Indian citizens. So everyday citizens like us. And in all forms, like Mr. Sridhar said, it could be in the form of time, skills, money, voice, things. It could be any of this, but given by everyday citizens like us, not by CSR, not by institutions, not by, ultra high net worth individuals, but by everyday individual citizens. So that's how we defined everyday giving. In the context of this study. So I think we all need to come on the same page before we can move ahead. That's why I wanted to just take this moment with you. Now, we asked this question in the registration form for this webinar, right? What percentage of your organization's total funding comes from everyday givers? And all of you responded to this. And I just wanted to show you what your responses said. So you can see here in this room, about 45% of you said that only less than 10% of your funding comes from everyday givers. And about 25% of you said that you don't actually currently fundraise from everyday givers, which is totally fine. And I guess that's why you're in this room, because you're curious to know how you can do more of this, do this better, right? And we can see, smaller percentages of organizations who are raising between 30% and a little more. 7% of you are raising more than 50% from everyday givers, which is excellent. And I just wanted to share what the study said so that we can understand the scale of everyday giving that's happening in the country at the moment towards nonprofits. So as per this study, about the average amount that's given by everyday givers to the nonprofit sector is about 30%. So about 30% of nonprofit fundraising is from everyday giving at the moment. That's the average number that we've been able to analyze. And if you look at other reports like the India Philanthropy report, also the numbers kind of match. It says that the Indian sector is supported by everyday givers by the percentage of about 30%. So just wanted to show you the scale and potential of engaging everyday givers for the sector. And as you can see, a lot of people in this room have not yet explored the potential, which means that there's a lot of work that we can do in this direction. And another interesting thing, which is not on the slide, but I wanted to share was from the respondents, over 90% of the respondents who said they engage everyday givers in any form, they said they find it worthwhile. They find engaging everyday givers worthwhile. And you can see in the slide that Aishwarya had presented, only 37% of the respondents actually said that they are actively fundraising from everyday givers, which is and only about 69 people responded to this particular question. So there's a lot of potential, and this is the current scale with everyday giving. Okay, with that, I want to introduce to you a concept called a data walk. What this means is that all of us are going to explore a few graphs which have come out of this study. And it doesn't matter what I think of these graphs or anyone from the Atma team thinks of this graphs. What we want is your reactions. your interpretations. What questions do you have? And then when you're looking at this data, what does it mean for your organization and the practices that you are doing within your organization? And every time I do a data walk, I say, I like to think of myself as a data therapist, because this is not about what I think of the data. It's about what you think in your relationship with this data. Okay, so this section is going to be successful only if you engage. So do explore, do engage. There's really no wrong answer, and I'm always around to support you through this process. So there are going to be two sections of the data walk that we're going to explore. First, we're going to look at a few graphs related to how nonprofits in India are accessing everyday givers. And then we're going to see, okay, once they access everyday givers, how are they engaging with these everyday givers? What are they doing with the people who have already given to them once? So with that, we'll get into the first data walk, which is how nonprofits are accessing everyday givers. But before I show you the first graph, is there any questions from anyone? Anyone needs any clarifications? Okay, then let's dive in. Okay, so I'm just going to explain to you how to look at this graph. I'm not going to tell you how to interpret it, but how to look at it. Okay, so you can see these bars, right, with multiple colors. That is how NGOs in India rated the outreach methods, how effective they found each of these outreach methods to access everyday donors. So you can see that the dark blue is they do not use this method, and then it's least effective, somewhat effective, and the green is when nonprofits are saying this is the most effective form of accessing everyday givers. And then you might see one thumbs up and thumbs down, right, on top of it. That's where we did additional analysis on our end, along with the data that came in from this study, to see what relationship these practices, these outreach methods have with the proportion of funds that nonprofits are raising from everyday givers, the question that we asked you as well. So if an organization is using a particular strategy, does that strategy have a positive relationship with the amount of funds that are raised from everyday givers, or a negative relationship? Don't worry too much about that, but just look at this graph. Just look at least the vertical bars, and let's see what are you seeing from this? What's the aha moment from this for you? Anybody, you can just unmute and speak, or you can just raise your hand. Yeah. Yes, doctor.
I think for me, the aha moment is that where somebody from social media told me you should text your people on WhatsApp at least once every week, which I thought just doesn't make sense for my community. It's very validating to see that actually doesn't necessarily work. And also how much of my board engagement has been to up my social media handles, given I'm an organization which is 47 years old that just launched its website last week. We still survive with our website in this age. Not something to be proud of, but it's just telling me of, and starting a Razor Pay button also just last weekend. It's very reassuring to see that actually I should really build and amplify getting funds now that we have set up after a lot of hesitance. So this is actually very helpful.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. And, with the social media piece, it's different for different organizations as well, right? This is what we are seeing from the data that we got from Udarta. And we're seeing that there is a negative relationship here, but that doesn't mean social media is not important for your organization. It may not be an important channel to access everyday givers, but it could be an important channel for you to set credibility about your organization. So I think we'll have, when you're looking at the data also, we'll have to kind of see what is this really meaning in the context of accessing everyday givers versus other things. So thank you for sharing that. That's an excellent insight. Anyone else? Anything that's standing out for you or is shocking for you? Does someone from the wishing factory want to respond? I see you're having a discussion there.
So what is shocking for me is they are making a lot of money, which is why they have the checkout charity. And actually checkout charity doesn't work for everyday giving. And
Yeah,
that's very surprising.
Yeah, that's what this data is also saying, that nonprofits in India are not, 63% of them are not even using checkout charity. It's not being used. And only about 5% who responded said that they're finding it effective. It could be that we are not using enough of it as a sector, but as of now, this is how the situation is. Yeah. One thing that stood out for me when I looked at this data is the fact that you see when the way the graph is going, right? Everybody rated existing, or the largest number of people rated existing donor networks, organizations, volunteers, as the most effective. So that's your closest circle, right? The closest people around you. And then as that circle expands and it's going to check out charity, which is the least personal type of relationship you can have with someone, it's becoming less and less effective. So I feel like there's something there about accessing new givers through people who are in your closest circle that's really coming out for me from this data. Okay, great. So we will go on to the next graph. We had asked a question about most effective strategy for fundraising from everyday givers. And the top rated one was fundraising from friends and family. And I just wanted to put two qualitative responses as well that we had received from the study. And I think the person who responded to this is on this call. But you can take a look at it and read it and see, what does this mean for you in your organization? Is this something that you practice in your organization? Do you find it tiring? Do you find it effective? If someone from Adhyayan is here, please do share anything additional you want to. Any thoughts? Anyone? Yes, Pranali.
I think this was as I saw that this is 64% effective. The one thing that came to my mind was that Apnishala we usually do a fundraiser in the month of February, that is Manhit Mein Jari, and most of our funding, most of our money usually comes from friends and families, and that is only because what you said in the previous sentence, that is the credibility that we've been building through our social media. So I think that it perfectly fits well what I'm just seeing right now.
Amazing. Yeah, it's really nice when data is validating your practices, right? So thanks for sharing that, Pranali. Okay, so let's just move ahead. I think this point is pretty clear. Wanted to share this one with you. Okay, this is about, why isn't this moving? Yeah, the frequency of NPO appeals. So, someone said, somebody had suggested reaching out to people every week on WhatsApp. This was a similar question. What is the frequency of appeals that you're putting out to everyday givers and for different types of giving? And the point that I really wanted to bring out here is right now in the Indian sector, what we can see is most nonprofits are fundraising as needed. There's no actual strategy going behind it, right? Either you're not making appeals or you're making an appeal whenever there is a need that comes. There's no strategy behind it. So one need comes up, we put out a campaign. And that's what's happening on an average within the sector. But we analyze this data further and you can read it. Just see what it says. Right? The more an organization is going out and appealing, there's higher percentage of increase in them seeing fundraising from everyday givers as reliable, which means they are obviously raising more money. And this doesn't mean you have to go out and appeal on a weekly basis. I think what this really shows is having a strategy behind your asks and your appeals and not doing it only when there is a need that arises, but every year integrating everyday giving into your fundraising strategy overall, if this is something that you want to invest in. So just, quick takeaways from this section. One is, start with your existing relationships and your networks. For the organizations, the 25% who said that you've not started fundraising from everyday givers as yet, start with your existing networks, right? Use word of mouth, use your referrals. That's the way to get started with everyday giving. And reach out proactively, but more than just frequent appeals, make sure that you're doing it in a strategic manner, you're doing it in a planned manner, and not only when there is a need that comes up. Okay, now I feel like you're getting the hang of how to do a data walk. So let's get into the next one, which is how do Indian NPOs engage everyday givers? And this is the first graph I want to show you, which I found very shocking. What does this mean? Anybody? Any reactions to this?
Honestly, I'm relieved. I thought I was the only one not doing a good job.
Okay, thanks for sharing that. Yes, this is supposed to be a data therapy session, so glad you're feeling relieved. Anyone else? Less than half NPOs are actually trying to retain donors for repeat donations. Absolutely right, right? So the top question that we get asked every time we're doing a fundraising session is, how do I access new givers, new donors? But as a sector, we're not thinking about the people who've actually already supported you. How are you retaining them? How are you nurturing relationships with them? How are you building a community around, the people who've already supported you once? Data from global data also shows us that it's so much cheaper to be able to retain an existing donor than go out and find new givers. So this is I think this was the top takeaway for me from the whole Udarta study. That as a sector, we need to start building systems to retain and nurture relationships with our givers. So then we asked a question about effective donor retention strategies, and this is what came out of it. You can see what percentage of organizations are using each of these strategies. You can just take a look at it. If anyone has any reactions, you can react to it. Is there a practice here that you do on a regular basis? Is there a practice you don't do that is showing up on this slide? Anybody?
So I would like to say here, so we are working in Bengal in the Sundarbans. So one thing we find it very difficult, probably we don't know how, because for small donation, I mean, ticket size, say 50, 45, it's very difficult as it's written over here, showing impact of their contribution. Really, this is something which we don't do. We do send a thank you mail and we have our newsletters, but then individually talking about their impact is something that we don't do. Probably that is something which is important and that will motivate them to again come back and support.
Yeah, that's a great point. And something that we do have in the field guide is how you can show your impact in different ways. So, when Aishwarya takes you through the field guide, you can take a look at those as well. And when you're exploring it later also. And has come up as a really important piece, right? And it is exhausting to be able to do it for small amounts, but how can you show the overall impact without saying, oh, your 100 rupees contributed to this? How can you show that, yes, your 100 rupees contributed to this larger impact that has been created in this area? So it is absolutely important. And we can see that 75% of Indian organizations are currently using this. And it has a positive relationship with recurring or repeat donors naturally, right? Because when you're showing the impact, you're able to retain your donors much more. And the other thing that shocked me is that 82.5% of organizations said that they acknowledge each donation. I'm thinking, what about the others? What about the other 18%? Are they not acknowledging each donation? Isn't that the most basic thing that we should be doing? Was something that stood out for me. And I hope all of you do acknowledge each donation. And this is more than just sending out an ATG receipt. I saw a LinkedIn post today about how saying thank you and feeling thanked are two different things. And are you making your givers feel thanked is something for us to all think about. Okay. Another question that we asked was around segmentation of givers. I'll move a little quickly now. And here you can see that only 36.9% of the organizations said that they segment everyday givers into different categories. And then we asked them what segmentation strategies they use. Some said that, most of them said that they segment based on scale of contribution. So what is the volume of contribution? Is it 100 rupees? Is it 1 lakh? That's how they categorize their donors. Some others said it's based on frequency of contribution. Are they giving once? Are they a recurring giver? Have they given more than once this year? And then there are other ways as well. But this data actually is so insignificant because only 41 organizations responded to this question, because there are only so many organizations that were actually segmenting their everyday givers. Any thoughts on this? Is segmentation important? Are you doing segmentation in your organization? Any thoughts? Anybody? Are you doing? Are you not doing? It's fine. I mean, majority of Indian nonprofits are not doing it. So
think for us, it has been about, the way we look at segmentation has also helped us to do what you showed in the previous slide better in terms of how do we engage then with each category. How much do we want to engage with a certain kind of donor based on any of these things, right? So like how Shatarupa was sharing about people who are donating rupees 100 versus someone who's donating rupees 10,000 or whatever, or a lakh. How do I engage with them in different ways, and how often do I engage? I think so that I also am able to prioritize my energy rather than saying I have to treat everyone exactly the same way.
absolutely. Thank you so much for saying that, Tiyasha.
Usually, segmentation, I believe we all do, but we do it in a very broader way. It's not in a narrow, like for HNI, UHNI, in that way, or maybe donations above 1 lakh. We consider them to be important. So we start segmenting them. But truly speaking, for us, 10,000 is also equally important,
Absolutely.
So we really don't give much of I have noticed, much of a thought to 10,000, like that. Like we have some donors who are very prompt in funding any like laptops or other needs which are in kind needs. They donate that. But so we know that this donor is for this. For laptops, we reach out to that person only, or to 2%.
That's amazing. That's amazing. That's a good type of
That's one segmentation. We have that. But again, other than that, probably we should now think more deeply about segmentations, just not considering them or the ones who pay us more than 1 lakh. This is a good thought.
Yeah, and it's great that Aishwarya is going to be sharing some segmentation toolkits with you later in today's session. So we'll get into that during that section. But I just want to quickly touch on some takeaways from this section. One is the fact that, your engagement with everyday givers, right? And I can see some examples in the chat box as well. It doesn't have to be expensive. The way you're communicating your thanks, your impact, it doesn't have to be very complex, well-designed, or very expensive. It can really be simple, but you have to be strategic about it. You have to plan for it. You have to think through it and make sure that the person who's on the receiving end is feeling the feelings you want them to feel, rather than, you doing a task of, oh, I sent out my acknowledgement receipt. And the other takeaway, of course, is, are we also thinking about retention? Are we thinking about the people who have supported you once? Are you nurturing a relationship with them, or are you constantly trying to get new donors, from the internet or just generally out in the world? And then, are you tracking the data, right? For you to be able to even start thinking about retention, you need to know who has given you. How much have they given? Are you tracking it? Where are you tracking it? What information are you tracking is also really important. And again, the field guides have some templates for this as well that we'll get into. And we always say, right, you have to send personalized communication out. But to be able to send personalized communication out, you need to be able to segment them. Until you do the segmentation exercise, are you even going to be able to personalize the communication that you're sending out is another question that I'll leave all of you with. And quickly just taking you through reasons why nonprofits said that they're not fundraising from everyday givers, because I saw, around 25% of you said that you're not fundraising from everyday givers. And anything that's standing out for you from this slide? Does anyone want to quickly respond? What's standing out for you? Why are Indian NGOs not fundraising from
Limited capacity, I think. It's
limited
mostly
capacity?
limited capacity because,
Yeah.
like for us, like the fundraising team is a very small team. Already have too much
Yeah.
on plate. Can't focus on individual
Mm.
fundraising or everyday fundraising.
Yeah.
Mostly it is limited capacity.
It's a drain on the energy on daily basis. It is better to scale up the operations by getting bigger chunks as against petty, and then keeping data entries and then keeping track of all this. That can be
Yeah.
one reason.
Because you don't have the systems for it, right? To simplify it or to make it efficient.
Not exactly data, but it will require manpower also, no? Engaging or deploying more manpower to keep track of all these things.
Yeah. But how much can you automate it is a question, right? We have how can we make this easier for our organization? Because we are all in this room today because we believe that there is something that it is worthwhile. It could be worthwhile for our organizations to engage with everyday givers. So one thing that stood out for me is that all of these reasons are internal reasons. It is saying that as an organization, I am unable to raise funds from everyday givers because there is an internal limitation. Right? It's not because everyday givers in India don't want to give, which I thought was a beautiful insight, right? We're not saying India is not generous or Indians don't want to give. Nobody has said that. All of the reasons are internal, which means that we can fix it. It will be effort, it will take time, but we can fix this issue, and we will be able to raise funds from everyday givers if we fix those issues. It will take time, but it's not because India is not generous and Indians don't give, which I thought was a beautiful insight that came out. Yes, sir, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, but what you are talking about everyday giving, of course, people may be giving maybe in temples or in gaushalas or any other cause in which they do not have to do any data entry. When we talk of organized sector asking for everyday giving, that means going to Razorpay or going to Keto or Milap and then doing some data entry. Obviously, it is going to be time consuming. To expect that also by every organization that they should be following this practice, I don't think it's a viable option.
Okay, so could you tell me why you're in this session, sir? What made you join us today? Just out of curiosity.
To learn more about larger spells of fundraising that can be on a sustainable basis. What we are lacking is sustenance or continuation.
Right. And one of the things that we've seen with organizations that do raise funds, I'm not propagating for this or against it. I'm talking about from data, what we've seen is that people who have organizations that are able to raise a larger percentage from everyday givers find it more sustainable, because even if 20% of them drop out the next year, it's not really bringing their operations down. Whereas if a large institution that is funding us suddenly decides to stop funding, one whole project might come down. So that's something that we are hearing from nonprofits as the reason why they want to now start engaging with everyday givers and put the systems in place for that to happen. Just leaving a thought with you, something that we are hearing from the sector.
Understood.
Everyday giving is the need of the hour, and if you see like organizations like Cry, today they have built up, it's all on everyday giving strategy.
Yeah. Absolutely. Great. So this was just the tip of the iceberg. If you're curious about more data around this, what other NGOs are doing around India, in engaging with everyday givers, do take a look at the report that Antara had shared earlier. And this report is just the beginning, right? And one of the things that we wanted as a collaborative when we set out this project was to make sure the insights from the study don't stay in just a report, that we're able to take it to the sector through these data walks, and most importantly, through a field guide that the Atma team has supported in creating. And I just wanted to say before I hand over to Aishwarya, one of the main reasons why we created this field guide was that top insight that came out for us. Organizations that are engaging individual donors already are saying that it's highly worthwhile. However, majority of Indian nonprofits are not thinking about nurturing a community of givers around them. They are not thinking beyond one-time givers. They're not thinking beyond ad hoc outreach. So we see that there is interest in the sector. There's potential for everyday giving to grow towards the sector a lot more. But as a sector, we don't have the systems, we don't have the tools in place to be able to make this happen. So the field guide is one step in that direction. Hopefully, it'll be helpful for many of you. There are many toolkits which Aishwarya will share with you, and at least one or two of them should be useful for you within the work that you're doing. So with that, I'll pass it back to Aishwarya to take you through the field guide.
Thanks, Kavita. So with the context that Kavita has set, really what we wanted was that the insights from the report don't stay within the report, that there's something actionable that comes out of it that can actually help nonprofits make sense of the insights and implement them in their organizations. And to that end is why we created the field guides. So these field guides were created. Again, it was a collaborative effort between Giving Together Foundation, Rohini Nilekani Philanthropies, Atma, Alter Collective, and the Giving Tuesday Data Commons. What we all came together to do is something that I'm going to try and distill in the next, half of this session. But before I get into that, just a question for all of you. Take out your phones, open WhatsApp, look at your last 10 non-family chats or groups, right? Just take out your phones, all of you. And just two simple questions. In the last 10 non-family chats or groups, how many of those people do you think truly know your mission, your organization's work, right? And if they do, are you speaking to all of them in the same way and about the same things? Are you saying the same thing to person in chat 1 and the person in chat 5? Just reflect on it, right? And as we go forward, just think about it. What I really need you to, take away from this is, are there people within your networks that you still haven't reached out to in the context of the work that you do? And secondly, if you have reached out to people, what is it that you're talking about? How intentional are you about what you're communicating to them about your work, right? And what we are going to go through now is tools, templates, etc., that can make this easier for you as you navigate it as an organization. So hold these thoughts as we go ahead. So the Udarta field guides are essentially a set of 8 modular toolkits that are designed to bridge the gap between the insights from the report and action. You can use them all, or you can pick out whichever makes most sense to you in the context of what you need. These toolkits are, applicable to organizations of all stages and sizes, right? And you can customize it as you see fit. They're open access, so it's freely accessible to you. Should you want to take it to more organizations, support more organizations in your network on accessing them, please get in touch with us. We are very happy to enable that as well. The intent is to support you on moving from ad hoc, one-time donations to more sustained, purposeful, engaged donors. Okay. A metaphor that you will see through the field guides is one of donor gardening. And I'll take you back to what Kavita was talking about. Acquiring new donors is very cost intensive. It takes a lot of effort to find new donors, but it's always easier to build those relationships and maintain relationships and engage your existing donor base. And that's what the donor gardening metaphor is all about, right? So it talks of small, consistent actions, habits that you can build into your organization to create a committed donor base, right? Um, and as we go through all of the toolkits, you will see how this metaphor comes alive. So the way we have sort of structured the entire field guide is 5 stages. Stage 1 is tilling the soil, right? Before the plant can grow, you really need to set the stage, right? So the efforts here start with network mapping. As Kavita had mentioned when she was, presenting the slide on, what methods of outreach are most effective, you would have seen that most NGOs that are able to effectively fundraise through everyday givers have also said that it's easiest to go through their existing networks, right? So we're going to try and figure out how this can be done through the toolkit here. Stage 2 is planting, right? So you've received your first donation. Someone that you have mapped in your network has come through, has supported you, right? Now, how do you systematically capture all of that information? And this can be a lot of effort, right? If you are trying to do it consistently, trying to do it well. And there are some tips, tools, tricks in the toolkit to minimize the effort, to automate certain steps, to make it easier for you to maintain this data. Stage 3 is where you nurture. right? So एक plant के लिए भी, garden में भी आपको खाद देना पड़ता है. You have to give water. You'll have to make sure that the plants receive sunlight. So akin to that, with donors as well, you'll have to put in your efforts towards making sure that your donors are engaged, they stay invested, they stay informed about the work that you're doing. So to that end, we have a few toolkits that can support you in doing that. The first of which is one that can help you in segmenting your donor base and then deciding what kind of actions to take with which categories of donors, right? The next is a storytelling bank. So often what we struggle with is when we want to communicate to a donor, we don't have the right kind of story from the programs team. We are hunting for, what kind of reports, updates we can share. This toolkit can help you organize some of that information. The next toolkit in the same bucket is the communications calendar that can help you plan not just your social media, but any offline communications as well, right? Now coming to the next stage, which is growth. Here, what we've prepared is a toolkit that can help you track your levels of donor engagement. So one is you maintain the data. The next is you make data-informed decisions using that data, right? So for that, you need to be able to track certain critical metrics, and the toolkit enables you to do that. Another toolkit that we have, which can help you translate, your current work around donor gardening into actually building a community of champions, is a toolkit around supporter-led fundraising. So if you remember the quote from Adhyayan, where they talked about, how they've actually leveraged some of these supporters as campaigners who have gone on to run sub-campaigns for the organization and fundraise on its behalf. This toolkit can help you do that, right? And finally, there's a toolkit on how to get your team on board all of this because, as has been said multiple times on the call, capacity is a constraint. If you're dependent on 1 to 2 people in the organization to do all of this work, chances are that you're going to eventually tire of it and move on to, what you might see as, your big ticket CSR institutional donations and not invest, as much on this. So the way this works is ideally your whole team should rally around it. Every person in the organization should see themselves as an ambassador for the organization and be ready to engage with everyday givers in whatever capacity, whether it's for funds, whether it's for volunteering, in however a manner a donor can support you. Your team should have the capacity to go out there, talk about your work, and engage with them. So this toolkit is about getting your team on board. How do you get them to buy into this idea that it's important to do this? So these are all the toolkits. Now, where do you find them? So we've created this website, and I'm going to urge Antara to share the link on the chat box. And I'm going to show you the website as well. So the website hosts the field guides on both fundraising and volunteering. All the toolkits can be accessed there. We have tried to manage the user interface in a way that is engaging, that can actually help you navigate it as a whole donor journey, can help you visualize at each stage what is it that it is critical to build. Also blended all the insights from the Udarta study to help you make sense of why these actions are important, right? Quickly taking you through the website. Let me know if you're able to see my screen. I'm going to. Can you see the website now? All right. So this is the page that takes you to the field guide on fundraising. We have the content organized here according to the donor gardening metaphor. As you scroll through, you will see that we've used Nidhi, a prototype of a donor, to actually take you through an entire journey of what it takes to get Nidhi from being someone who's in your network to being an engaged donor and a supporter of your organization, right? So as you scroll down, you will see each of the stages organized as different chapters on the website. You click on a chapter, you will be able to access the details in the toolkit in the chapter. So, for example, if we are interested in understanding how we can build our networks, which is something that I'm going to talk about in a bit as well, you can scroll through to that section. There's a scenario that will be asked of you here, and there's a question for the group. So imagine you need to raise funds to desilt a lake. How would you begin? Maybe some quick responses on the chat box. Do you all think option A is the right answer or option B is the right answer? Okay, Reza says A. Anyone who says B? B, lots of B's coming. Okay, okay. So if you click on B here, what it takes you to is the corresponding insight from the data study and tells you that yes, it's important to try and tap into your existing database. And then you'll get access to the toolkit as well, the network mapping toolkit, right? And when you click on that, you also get a bit of an explainer that tells you why you should use this toolkit, who should be using it, and how to use it. And then the templates themselves, right? So all of the toolkits that I mentioned are going to be available on the website. You can take your time to go through it. In case you feel that you don't want to go through this entire donor journey route, you just want ready access to all of the toolkits, that's there as well. So if you go to the top of the website, you will see the 4 dots. You can click there. It shows you a list of all the toolkits. You can go to the specific one that you're interested in, or you can click on all fundraising toolkits. It'll ask you for certain details that you'll need to enter, post which you'll be able to access the toolkit. Yeah. Any questions so far? It's fairly intuitive, fairly easy, and you all can play around with it, really explore the website. Okay, so if you're all good to proceed, we are now going to do a little bit of a deep dive into one toolkit to begin with, right? In your responses to the pre-workshop survey, a lot of you talked about, wanting to learn about how to acquire new donors. And that is a constant refrain. As much as we push people to, work towards retention, step 1 is, of course, acquiring a donor base. And to do that, one of the tools that we have put down in the toolkit, and it's detailed there, is network mapping. Many of you might be doing it intuitively, right? In some way or the other, you might be doing, network mapping already. But this helps you organize a little bit of your thinking and effort around it, right? And put a structure to it. So what is network mapping? So that is essentially the process of systematically listing all the people that are connected to your organization, whether directly or indirectly, right? The reason we do this is to surface any hidden connections. It's to understand what our reach looks like, and of course, to find supporters that we can engage with. Now, when you look at network mapping, basically what you're trying to do here is try and understand who is in your primary network, in your secondary network, and in your tertiary network, right? Your primary network or your innermost circle consists of people like your staff members, your board members, maybe volunteers engaged by your organization. It could be current or past donors that you've been working with. It could be your program alumni, your program participants. These are people who've had some interaction with your work, who understand your work, who believe in it, possibly even benefited from it, or have appreciated the work, right? So that's your closest network. They're people who you have a relationship with already, right? The secondary network are people your inner circle knows, friends of friends, neighbors, colleagues, etc. Right? The tertiary network are essentially people who might have some shared interests with you, but might not have engaged directly with you. Right? So, for example, if you're sitting in say Calcutta, in a certain area in Calcutta, maybe this is an organization that is working in the vicinity, doing work with the same constituents as you are working. Could be someone who has a shared interest in your thematic area. So these are those people that have some intersection with your work, but you have not engaged with them. So this is your tertiary network. Now, this first step to be doing this is to identify what are the categories of people that exist in your primary network, in your innermost circle, right? And just bucket them. Just put those labels down to begin with. So it could be board members, it could be staff, it could be volunteers, it could be vendors, it could be donors, etc. So just make a list of, what are these categories of people who exist in your primary network. The next step then is to start putting down the names of people in each of those categories. So say your board has four people on it. You've listed board members as a category. Now you list down the names of the 4 board members. Or volunteers is a category that you've put down. Under that, maybe you have 20 volunteers you're engaging with currently. So you put down the names of those volunteers. Okay, so that's step 1. Next is to try and identify how each of those people can actually contribute to the organization. And not all contributions might look the same. Some might be able to give you time, some might be able to give you money, some might be able to lend their voice and support. So try and map out, who you could reach out to for what. Now, within all of those names that you would have mapped out, there might be certain people that come through as, maybe slightly more engaged people in your network who can actually be your champions and supporters, right? People that you believe can actually go out there and try and raise funds for you. There'll be a small subset to begin with, right? So try and identify who those people can be. The next stage of this can be then to map out, who can be the second degree connections from these people. And the process goes on and on until you can find, degrees of connection. But step one, most essential, is to look at who is in your primary network. More often than not, we have underestimated the potential of our primary network, right? We have really not leveraged our primary network to begin with. There are people that we have either not considered at all, or we have hesitated from asking anything of, right? So start with just listing out who is in your primary network. Now, to do this, there will be a template that we share on the chat box. You can take this up as an activity post the call as well. What you'll need to do is, when we share the template with you, just make a copy of it for yourself. So go to File, go to Make a Copy, create a copy of it on your drive with your name perhaps. So go to Folders there, select your drive, and create a copy and start working on it. So how you use this template is essentially you can start listing all the categories that are relevant to you. Say, for instance, board, alumni, vendors, donors, and as many categories as you can think of, and then start listing the names under this, right? So say ABC, EF are people under this, and you can select how you think they can contribute. That I think these people are good for time. Someone else might be good for money and in-kind donations. You can check as many categories as are relevant, right? So this is step one of being able to do your network mapping. As you do this more often, keep revisiting this, you're going to mine a lot of connections in your network, right? And be able to expand this base. So I'm going to pause here. Any thoughts, any questions so far before we move on?
Of course, you may say that why are you in this seminar or why are you in this webinar? Don't you think all these things are good when the organization is new or the initial years of setting up? After 10 years, just a different metaphor to suggest a boutique designer or a sweet shop. They both do not rely on their own kith and kin. They have to expand their base. They have to expand their market size or the share they have in the vicinity they have. So they cannot be always depending on their close circle of friends or even the secondary circle of friends. Am I right or not?
So, sir, I don't think these efforts are mutually exclusive, right? I think by no means are we suggesting that you're not supposed to acquire new donors or not look elsewhere. It is that, this is your most proximate network and the one that you can leverage the most easily, right? So this is the low-hanging fruit that a lot of people miss often, right? And sometimes these can actually help you with making connections even with institutional donors or your big ticket donors, right? You might reach out to, say, a board member, not for funding, but to connect you to a CSR.
Yeah,
So
that
network mapping is something which will be worthwhile regardless of the size and stage of the organization. Of course, the size of your networks, the kind of networks that you have might look very different when you're at a mature stage, right? But it's a worthwhile activity nevertheless.
Okay.
All right. Any other thoughts, questions?
Aishwarya, I have one.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, the definition of everyday giving is something new. Okay, I think it made me wear a new lens. Thank you for that. And at the same time, when you say this everyday giving includes time, skills, as well as what's the other thing? Voice.
Voice.
Voice. Yeah. But all the graph shown by Kavita only pointed to fundraising.
So that's because the focus of today's session was fundraising. So the report actually looks at all of these, right? So
All of
it
these. Oh,
does talk about,
okay.
yes.
Therefore, I
And you
thought.
can explore it. Yes,
Okay,
you can
got it.
explore it at depth.
Yeah.
Plus, we had just done a session last week on the non-funding giving, which is volunteering, your time,
Right.
your skills, your voice, right? So
Right.
maybe we can share the recording of that session as well. I think it's up on YouTube by now, so we should be able to share a link to that in this
Oh,
mail.
that would be great.
So
Therefore,
you'll be able to.
whatever I feel now, the thing is, see, as I introduced earlier, I belong to a blood center.
Hmm.
And the only lifeline that keeps us going, which has kept us going for last 40 years, is voluntary blood donors.
Yeah.
Therefore, there's everyday giving with us as well. But in my
Yeah.
head, I was always skewed. Okay, I was always biased, saying that okay, the funding only happens from the so-called CSR, but there's
Yeah.
everyday giving happening. Therefore, I think,
Absolutely.
yeah. Therefore, eyes wide open. Thanks for that. Thanks for the definition itself.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank
Thank
you, Ravindra. And we'll share a link to the session that happened on volunteering as well. And you can see more details. Actually, the website that I was showing you, I only took you through the section on fundraising, but there's an entire field guide on volunteering as well, which you can explore. Right. So that has all the toolkits related to setting up, designing, managing a volunteer program, engaging volunteers, turning volunteers into champions. So it has all of that. Right. The principles stay the same, right? The principles of say trying to build out your networks or trying to tap into your existing holds true for your fundraising needs as well as your volunteering needs. That's the easiest place to start at for an organization. But yeah, the specialized sort of inputs for both of these are available in the separate field guides. Yeah. Okay. In the time, I'm going to take you through one more toolkit, right? And feel free to reach out with any more questions that you have on this offline as well. We'll be available to take any questions. But going to the next toolkit, Kavita mentioned segmentation, right, as a very important activity, and we heard from some of the NGOs in the room as well that has been something that has not been explored or has been an area of improvement, area of challenge. So we actually have some content around that as well in the toolkits, right? And before we get into what the toolkits have, just wanted to talk a little bit about what segmentation is, right? So segmentation is essentially the practice of identifying groups of everyday givers who share some similar characteristics, right? And doing this can ensure that we are able to tailor our communication to these relevant groups. Now, typically what happens is NGOs do either, extremely generalized communication where there is, one size fits all, one email blast that goes to everyone, one WhatsApp broadcast that goes to everyone, or there is hyper personalized messaging that happens, right? For some big ticket donors, you try and connect with them more personally and try and engage with them. But what we're recommending here is that if you actually profile your donor segments, you can decide which ones need higher intervention, which ones need generalized support, which ones need maybe regular updates, not super personalized, but sit somewhere in between. So you can actually create those donor profiles and decide how you want to engage with them, right? This prevents message fatigue, right? So you're not bombarding people with things that they don't want to know. You're also deciding to focus your energies where it's important, right? Because your time is constrained, your bandwidth is constrained. So what is a donor segment? Like I said, it's a group of donors who share a common characteristic. Now, what do those characteristics look like? In the slide that Kavita had shared on segmentation, you had seen that some parameters on which you can profile them can be the size of donation. It could be the frequency of donation. It could be their location. It could be their proximity to the or interest in the cause that you're working in. So there could be multiple parameters that you use to segment it. And it's not even an either or. You can choose to use more than one parameter as well, right? So you can look at, big ticket local donors, or you can look at big ticket donors who donate more frequently. So you can use a mesh of these parameters as well to develop your segments. Some examples, for example, are one-time donors. Now that's a donor segment that you've created. Local donors could be another segment. Recurring donors, because they behave differently than one-time donors, could be another segment that you create, right? So these are just some examples of how you can do it. Now, what you will need to do is to decide what criteria is relevant to the context of your organization and go with that criteria to segment it. Then look at your list of donors and decide which one fits into which of those buckets. What we have done for you is created a template that can help automate some of this for you, right? I'm really excited to share that because one of the themes that keep coming up in the context of retail giving, individual giving, is the volume of effort it requires, right? So much of data to manage. How do we even begin to organize that data? So what we have done is created a donor database template that can help you maintain your donor data, segment your donor data, and also then decide on what actions you need to take with the respective donor segments, right? So this is what the donor database template looks like. Now, where you begin is with the instructions sheet. You will be able to see how to navigate this entire document. Feel free to explore it post the call. you can go to the key, right? In the key, what you need to do is select the year that you're in for which you're doing this entire exercise, right? So go to the drop down. I have selected the year 2627. What it automatically does is populate these next 3 years as the previous 3 years, right? So this is just some automation that we have enabled on the sheet for purposes of calculation. The next thing you need to do is define your segments. This sheet has enabled segmentation on the basis of donor size and donor frequency. Donor geography is also another category that is captured, but principally we have done it on the basis of donor size and frequency. So here you get to define your thresholds. So for example, in the context of this dummy organization that we've created here, a small donor is anyone who donates between anything less than 1,000 in the last 3 years, right? A mid donor is someone who donates up to 5,000. And a large donor is someone who has been donating more than 5,000, but possibly as much as 20,000 to the organization, right? So you build these out as categories. What you're putting here is the upper threshold of what qualifies as a small, mid, and large donor. So what you're putting down here is the lower threshold, correct? Antara, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, lower threshold.
The threshold of what constitutes a small, mid, or larger donor, right? So you get to define it and customize it over here. Then you go on to the next one, which is geography. Here you get to fill in what constitutes local, domestic, etc. for you. So if you're an organization, say, that's working in Mumbai, maybe Navi Mumbai still qualifies as local for you, or if you're in Gurgaon, NCR might qualify as local for you. So you can stipulate that, right? Then go to frequency of donation. Now here you need to define what your rules are for what counts as a one-time donation, what counts as a recurring donation, and what counts as repeat. In the template that we'll be sharing, we have defined some of these rules, right? So we have said if the average gap between donations is 120 days or less, then it counts as a recurring donation. If the gap is more than between donations is more than 120 days, it's not a recurring but a repeat donation. If they've donated only once in the last 3 years, it's a one-time donation, right? So we've built out these categories based on frequency as well. Now, the next interesting thing that this sheet does is it gives you a space to catalog all of your donors, your leads, all of your prospects. For instance, you had come across a few names in your network mapping exercise, right? So you had a past donor called Antra, okay? You had a board member that you had not factored as an everyday giver that you want to include in this database called Meghna, okay? You can put down all of the names that have emerged from your network mapping exercise over here, fill in the corresponding details or as much of the corresponding details as you want to fill, right? So you can put down their contact details, etc. You can put down what you hope they will give you. So here, for instance, it could be money, it could be connections, it could be voice that they contribute, any of these things, right? And you can also tag them as donors or prospects. Now, Antara, for example, might be a previous donor, right? Or Meghna is a prospect, has not donated before. You can put down, some context on who they are, how you came about, interacting with them, etc. over here in this column. So this allows you to document some basic information on your leads and your donors. Now, if any of those donors end up giving any money to your organization, the details of those donations can be captured over here. So for example, say Antara has given you a donation in this year. I put down her name. As long as her name is entered on the donor database, it will get picked up over here in the dropdown. So you can put her name down. You can add the year in which you are receiving that donation and put down the date of the donation. So here, for instance, I am receiving this donation on 6th November 2026, say for instance, right? And I put down the amount, 1,000 rupees, crowdfunding, check, whatever it is, towards a cause, towards generalized donations. You can maintain all of this data. Thank you notes, ATGs, etc. You can capture it here. Now, if you already have a system in your organization, an Excel tracker that you're using, continue to use that. We're not advocating that this is, superior to any other system that you might have, but make sure that what we are trying to do over here through this tracker is something that you're able to do through whatever existing trackers you already are using. If you have a sophisticated system like a CRM, say Streak, Zoho, etc., feel free to adapt, how you use that to make sure that you're able to leverage the intelligence of that system to make better decisions on segmentation and communicating with your donors, right? This is most useful for organizations that are not in the habit of tracking their donations, right? That are not doing any of this. I think it's a good place to start at without investing too much in a high cost solution. Now, when you enter this data for a donor, what happens is that the donor database sheet sort of picks up that data automatically, right? So for instance, I just made this entry for Antara. What this sheet is now doing is it's picking up that donation and showing me that Antara has donated 1,000 rupees in this FY. Because there was no entry showing it as a zero, right? But those where there are past entries, right? It will also show you, for example, average donations in the last 3 years, total donations in the last financial year, the last donation date, second last donation date, third last donation date, etc. Right? So you can see that being reflected for some of these donors because we've put corresponding dummy data over there, right? So this helps you track their donation history, history of their engagement, and then decide how you want to engage with them on an ongoing basis. The other bit of automation that is also being done is based on the rules that we have defined. It is also tagging these donors based on their giving size and giving frequency. So, for example, for this donor, Shardul, based on the size of donation, has been tagged as a mid-sized donor. Based on his giving frequency, has been tagged as a recurring donor. And this is a classification that we've come up with. So, if you go to the key, something interesting that we've done here is that based on donation size and donation frequency, we have created these segments. So someone who's tagged as a large donation size donor and in terms of frequency is a recurring donor will get tagged as a loyal supporter. So these are tags that we have created. Should these, in the context of your organization look different, if you want to call it something else, if you want to classify them differently, feel free to do that. But this is how we have classified it. And the sheet currently picks up from this table and maps each donor to the categories that we've created. So for example, someone who has been tagged as a small but repeat donor is tagged as an everyday hero. Someone who is a mid category in terms of giving size, but a recurring donor is a high potential. Someone who might be large and also a recurring donor would be categorized accordingly, right? So every donor segment has been defined and each donor has been categorized. Now, what you need to do is decide how you want to engage with these donor categories. And that's where we come back again to how do you make that decision? One way to do it might be to actually ask your donors, right? How do they want to stay in touch with your organization? What interests them about, the work that you're doing? Try and profile them on the basis of information that you actually have about them, right? This can be done through a casual conversation. You could actually do a survey with a sample size, of your everyday giving donors. Try and get some insights into, what would work and not work. In the absence of any of that information, you can still do segmenting because you have an intuitive understanding based on how you've engaged so far, right? Or the small experiments that you might have done with a few donors. So you do have an intuitive sense of what seems to be working and what is not working. So you can use that intelligence to then decide on what actions need to be taken. One useful framework to do that is the power interest grid. So the power interest grid helps you classify your donors or donor segments in terms of the power or influence that they have over your work and the interests that they might have in your work, right? This grid can be used in various contexts, but it's very useful to segment your everyday givers as well. So those that have very low power, say people who are not giving consistently and very small ticket size, and also demonstrate low interest in your work, you might not want to invest a lot of effort in keeping up with them, right? So you might just want to monitor them, send them some basic updates, etc. Someone who seems to have a high degree of interest, They say that they want to visit your organization, would love to, figure out ways in which they can engage with your organization, have also been giving significant amounts to your organization. Now, someone of that sort might be in the manage closely bucket, high power, high interest. So based on this, you can take a call on, how you want to keep your different donor segments engaged. So maybe the ones that are your loyal supporters, you manage very closely, right? Loyal supporters would be the large donors who are giving recurring donations or repeat donations. You manage them very closely. Someone who has not given anything in the last couple of years, right? Someone who you're not sure has that giving potential might be in the monitor category. You don't invest a lot of effort, but you stay engaged. So you can take a call on how you want to interact with each of these donor segments. That then in turn influences the decisions that you take on how you communicate, right? And the toolkits around the communications calendar, the storytelling bank can actually help you do this. One interesting toolkit that we've also developed for donor segmentation allows you to document, the preferences of stakeholder personas that you can develop around your different kinds of everyday givers, and actually put down preferences around, how do they like to stay updated? Do they prefer a WhatsApp message? Do they prefer an email? Do they want to see only your annual reports? Do they want more frequent updates? So you can actually profile all of your donors. We've also interestingly helped you with AI prompts that can help you do this, deriving the intelligence out of the data that you have. So if, for example, you have maintained donor data on the donor preferences on how they would like to stay engaged, then what the AI prompts can help you with is the decision making around which segment needs to be communicated with in which way, right? So the toolkits are quite interesting. They're quite extensive. There are a lot to cover in a single session. What we hope to do today is just provide a teaser to what all you can explore in the toolkits. But we are available for anything that you need in terms of support on actually actioning those toolkits out in your organizations. And I'll just take a pause here to see if there are any questions. Okay, so as you can see, there are 8 toolkits. We barely skimmed the surface in today's session. We only talked about the network mapping one and a little bit on donor segmentation. There's much else that you can explore. Feel free to go through the website and come back to us. Yeah. All right. The floor is open for any questions, any thoughts, any discussions, and no holds barred. Yeah, it's a safe space.
Thank you so much, Aishwarya and Kavita. Um, just checking if there are any questions, you can please go ahead and ask. I think there was one on, I think many things have been also answered on chat. But somebody was asking about a toolkit, sorry, any automation tools. But I think you got that, Reza, I'm hoping.
Yeah, so
I
some
mean, a
amount
lot
of
of
automation.
tools.
Yes, some amount of automation has been enabled in just these toolkits and how we've structured them. They're designed to be easy to use. We have tried to keep in mind the practical constraints of organizations and the challenges that they have around maintaining data. That said, there are many tools out there that you can explore. And CRM tools actually are quite in the
Yeah.
vogue right now. So if there are other tools that you would like to use to do the same things, feel free to do that. So we are by no means saying that this is the best tool out there. This is something that can get you started. What's more important though is to build habit and consistency around maintaining that information, right?
Yeah.
That's the most important thing. And then using the data that you've collected to actually make informed decisions.
Hello, Aishwarya. This is Raghu here.
Yes.
So, suppose if you want any support or doubt regarding when we are using these toolkits, like how can we reach out to you, or like what is there? Is there any?
Yeah, maybe we can share our email IDs in the chat box. You can feel free to reach out to the Atma team. We'll also be sending across a mail post this session with all the resources that we've been talking about. So
Okay.
we'll add our email IDs there. So you can definitely reach out to the Atma team for anything more that you need help with. And we'll come back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Aishwarya.
Antara has already shared her email ID, and like Aishwarya said, we will be sending a very detailed email with email IDs of the speakers and how you can get in touch. But regarding the guide, if you have any questions, if you face any challenges, the best person would be Antara. She's worked quite extensively on them and will actively resolve all queries. And would love to hear any feedback once you use them. That would also be helpful. We do take our feedback quite seriously. On that note, I will also share the feedback form to this webinar, and you can let us know how it was. We do read every single feedback and try to incorporate it, so uh, it matters a lot. Yeah, we can continue to have some questions. Maybe you can also stop sharing screen, perhaps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, do want to say
Anything?
that the way the toolkits have been designed, they've been designed keeping in mind that NGOs would need to access it independently. So we don't want to be sort of the roadblock to adoption or create a bottleneck over there. So to the extent possible, we've put down as much detail as we can in terms of instructions on how to use it, explainers, all of that is there in each of the toolkits. But still, if you find yourself stuck, of course, we are available. Yeah.
Yeah. And just a small note, it may look overwhelming, but actually, if you see, it's quite intuitive. So we have seen when we work with organizations through our different programs, very small grassroots organizations, they start doing this. And I think in the chat also somebody was saying just that asking part is difficult, right? Like, आप पूछोगे नहीं तो मिलेगा नहीं. So you have to do that. Uh, yeah. So any further questions or anyone wants to share any insights of your own, that would also be great. Yes, Mayur, we'll be sharing both the decks used by Kavita and Aishwarya. The recording will be up on YouTube. So just give us maybe by Monday we'll be able to do this. We'll be sharing everything. Yeah. And of course all the resources, the links, everything that was shared. So
Reza, to
Reza
your
has
question,
asked. Yeah.
just to respond to that, Reza. See, one, of course, the amount of effort depends on the volume of everyday givers that you're engaging with. So that is a factor. However, if you're being very consistent and updating the details on a regular basis and not sort of piling all of that information for a one time or a bulk update, chances are that the effort will seem less, right? The minute you're sitting with 100 plus donors ka data that you'll have to enter, that's a lot of effort. So as with anything, if the efforts are regular and consistent, it will be easier for you to manage manpower wise. Because on a daily basis, how many such transactions or how many new leads would you be generating? They'll be limited. So you should be able to keep up with the data entry.
Tejashree has asked one more question on increasing visibility. Like,
Yes, Tejashree, I think the slide that Kavita took us through on the outreach strategies does tell us that reaching out through your existing networks is the most effective. But people have found social media or advertising through their website and other outreach methods also equally useful. So do go through the section of the Udarta report that talks about the outreach strategies. And there might be some insights for you. So it's also peppered with some anecdotes of organizations, some quotes, etc. So as you go through it, you'll realize that there's a lot that organizations are doing, and it's great to stay informed on all the best practices around this. Yeah, but Kavita, do add.
I think you've covered it, Aishwarya. I mean, the report does have a lot of insights on what's working and what's not working as well for nonprofits when it comes to accessing new givers. And that is the top question that we always have, right? How do I access new givers? How do I increase the visibility of my organization? So do take a look at the report. And another thought that I had is, I was just thinking if there are new people joining your team, new people joining your fundraising team or your team in general, the field guide is actually such a great resource for them to go through as a learning journey to just change their mindset or inculcate a mindset that's around creating a community of givers rather than thinking about it as sales. Right? A lot of people come with that sales approach when it comes to cultivating new donors. but the field guide is such a great learning resource even for your new joinees. So, I think you should add it. If you're interested in engaging with everyday givers more rapidly in your organization, you should add it to your orientation kit as well for new joinees.
Thank you. Thank you, Kavita. One of our partners, they've over the years built a very tight-knit WhatsApp group of their everyday givers. And you just see things happen there very quickly. But it's not like not at all a good morning, good afternoon kind of thing. And they don't bombard either. It's very specific, very targeted. And of course, they've leveraged the fact that they're in one area, one locality. So they've slowly built that community, not like, just bulk add everyone or put them on a list, nothing like that. So you really see the power of staying in touch and creating that group. So that's another way. And I think each of them bring one more person every year. Since I've been part of it since a long time, I see that happening. So Tejashi, that might be another way.
Yeah, the network mapping exercise is actually so powerful,
Yeah.
because we didn't take too much time on it. It may have seemed like, it's just another exercise or another toolkit. But we have had organizations who've done this exercise 10 years ago who still reach out to me saying, Kavita, the network mapping thing that we spoke about, we still do it in our organization. And every 6 months we're doing it. And every 6 months we're adding new people to our list because we are constantly meeting new people at conferences, at parties, in our social life, and we're constantly adding them to this list. It's been so useful. So, if you start doing the network mapping exercise, you'll actually understand what a powerful exercise that is, not just for you to do it personally, but for you to also do it with your team members. Make it a 6 monthly exercise for your whole team to sit together and do the network mapping exercise. Because your team members are the best advocates for the work that you do. Your volunteers are your best advocates. So yeah, don't think of it as like, oh, it's just another toolkit. It is actually a very, very powerful exercise.
Yeah, and when we have space in our sessions to actually devote some time to doing it hands-on, a lot of organizations have gone away with some aha moment, right? Someone that they didn't think of at all suddenly, is like, oh, we didn't reach out to them. So yeah, we've had that experience as well. And do share in your feedback as well if you feel that, a deeper session on the toolkits is something that you'd like, more instructional spaces where we can actually handhold you through, navigating the toolkits. We are happy to explore that as well. Yeah, Risu, that's an interesting question. Kavita, do you want to take that? What's a good stopping point?
Yeah, sure. So one of the things that we have seen is it's best to meet givers where they are, right? And most people want to give. Most people in this world want to contribute. They want to give in some way, but you might be asking for something that they don't want to give. So maybe changing your pitch rather than asking for the same thing constantly might be something for you to try before you stop. So for example, somebody might have time or they might have a talent that they want to give to your organization. They may want to come and do a session as opposed to giving a certain amount of money. Some people may not want to do anything. They just want to give money and finish it off. So try and understand where this person is coming from, what they need, and changing your pitch is also important before you stop trying. But it also depends on how you're trying. I can't answer this question in a very straightforward manner. It's what are you trying for? Where are you trying this? What channels are you using? Who is this person? I think all of those things also matter. Hope that answered your question, Arisu. Amazing. Thank you all for joining us today. It's been a great session. Thank you for being so engaged in the whole
And
conversation.
it's always nice to see so many questions. And yeah, this is also a group that we have, I feel like we built over time. Some faces are familiar, some are new. So do keep coming in. We do this every month. And if you have any suggestions for a topic, you can fill it out in the feedback form. Or if you would like to come and take a session via the webinars, via the Atma webinars, we would love to do that. We have had in the past a panel with NGOs coming in. So we would love to speak to some of you. So do reach out. And yes, thank you so much. I'm stopping the recording, but we'll stay on for a little while in case there are more questions. Yeah.